Welcome to Myth Informed with your hosts, Brian and Dimitri. Today we have with us David Fitzgerald, best known as an atheist activist, historical researcher, writer, international public speaker, and novelist. David is very well known for his 2010 work titled Nailed 10 Christian Myths That Show Jesus Never Existed at All, as well as being one of the busiest guys in the Bay Area, and a couple of other things that we're going to be talking on the show later on.
A couple other books, Jesus, Myth, and in Action, also The Mormons, and recently I saw Time Shards, which I think is a fiction. Are you now an international man of mystery?
This is exactly right. It's science fiction, in fact, and it's the first book in a trilogy. And I think I lost you guys.
We're going to make a show out of it either way.
I think I lost you for a minute there. Hello.
Yeah. Oh, so sorry about that. I was just saying that you also wrote Jesus, Myth, and in Action, The Mormons, and also Time Shards. And I was wondering, is Time Shards fiction? Are you now an international man of mystery?
That's exactly right. It's a science fiction. It's a time travel post-apocalyptic mashup that I wrote with my wife, Dana Fredsty. And we're very again. I think we just froze up again.
Yeah, David.
Dang it, we never have these. We have not had these lately. Now we have gremlins in the internet.
It really, you could have turned that into a nicer joke. Like, I swear this never happens. Never happens.
It doesn't.
It's something very freaky when you're talking about a science fiction book called Time Shards, and all of a sudden time freezes and the interview crashes to a halt.
Well, the real question, David, is: are you trying to follow in the late great footsteps of L. Ron Hubbard, or
I swear I thought you were going to say Isaac Asimov. Did not see that coming. Yeah, no, I'm not sociopathic enough to do it. L. Ron Hubbard, I think.
Fuck it. Well, he's a has-been. Come on, this guy started his own religion.
Right?
Like L. Ron over here.
But David's an atheist activist, so I mean, you know, Flippy's just gone the other way. Would you consider yourself an anti-theist, though?
I mean, when we start parsing down the definitions, yes, I am. That doesn't mean I want to like burn churches and kill Christians. But yeah, I'm pretty much anti-religion of all kinds. I don't think it helps, and it causes more harm than good.
Right.
It's the way we oppose it, and the actual our reaction to religious things is what matters.
I think that's right. Like and I guess to quote Patreon, manifest observable behavior. Right? Maybe we'll touch the Patreon scandal a little bit later.
I carry this portal's prayer with me at all times. Sure that I'm on the level.
But there's a lot of questions these days, and I don't consider myself an anti-theist, although I'm not a believer.
Did you start as one?
I definitely started as one. Yeah.
So you were a militant, angry fucking atheist.
No, I was a militant, I was a believing Catholic, like a heart believing Catholic.
I meant, did you start as a what did you call it?
Anti-theist.
Anti-theist.
So yeah, I would say that I Christopher Hitchens used that all the time. So I just kind of thought, well, I'm what he is, and
right.
I've kind of moved a little bit on that, where I don't necessarily think I'm an
anti-theist. You don't have a negative bone in your body.
Well, but I listen to you. I'm concerned about things like right now. I would say, regardless whether they're on the right or the left, there's a shit ton of political tension in the air. And
for sure.
And I wonder, it's like, I've heard the argument made, like Jordan Peterson will say, that religion is more, even though there's plenty of problems with it, and others. He's not Ben Shapiro make this argument. There's plenty of other people, but it's a net good. There's obviously good and bad, like any company. Is they're producing goods, but obviously no company is perfect, so everything is either a net good or net bad. I don't think there's a perfect.
David, here's what we decided before the show. We're going to talk to you like normal people for 15-20 minutes, soften you up, get you a little buttery,
and I went right into it.
And then we were gonna throw
steer the column right into crazy town. Is that it?
It's true, but why don't you give us maybe some a baseline or background? What is your current kind of political leanings and and where you stand on religion? Maybe summarize first.
Right. Well, let me start from the beginning. I was raised total religious, Southern Baptist, pretty much fundamentalist. We didn't believe in speaking in tongues or things like that. But as far as old Earth creationism and things like that. We were as fundy as anything else out there.
Wait, you mean young
You're
Earth
older.
creationism?
Sorry, young Earth creationism. Yeah. And so there was lots of cognitive dissonance growing up because I loved dinosaurs, I loved science fiction, and I was raised Southern Baptist. And at a certain point, there's this tension between those two things that finally popped, in college.
Haven't you been to Ken Ham's museum? You know, we use dinosaurs as taxis.
I would love to go see it. In fact, I think atheists visiting, ironically, are the only people seeing it anymore.
That's a good point. Fuck, that's the only reason to go to Ohio, I think.
From Ohio.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I said it.
I'm going back there for Christmas.
I'm pretty sure that's in Kansas anyway, right?
What's
No,
that?
I thought it was in
Ark Encounter?
No, it's actually in Kentucky. It's you.
Kentucky. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Kentucky.
Right.
Sorry, Kansas.
But you fly into the airport, like the greater Cincinnati airport's actually in Kentucky. So
I didn't know
they
that.
all kind of blend together down there.
Gotcha.
So
yeah, sorry. So David, tell us about how you were brainwashed.
Oh yeah, and that's exactly how I put it too. It was our social network. It was the universe. The same way about my upbringing as a Christian. It's their whole worldview. There was a freeze for a second there. Did you lose me again?
No, it's all right. We did.
We might have to fight through a little bit of robot, and let's hope it gets better.
Yeah. All right. Well, if you lose anything, just let me back up. Just tell me and I'll back up. But anyway, so now that I'm a grown up and I'm not a Christian anymore, I still have lots of religious friends of all kinds of different stripes. So I don't actively try to talk them out of it, but online in my professional life, that's all I do. I'm like a black belt in talking people out of their religion. And that's what I do. Yeah. And
I mean, you're known for your humor as well. There's that.
Yeah,
I'm sure that came from
humor.
Oh yeah. Well, and, again, I don't mean to be a dick about it. I don't want to put people down for it, but I want to make people laugh and I want to make people think. And what you were saying earlier about, well, maybe there's some net good or net bad. I think even if Christianity was just an unflinching wellspring of nothing but goodness, the fact that it's not true is a serious problem. And the fact that it's not true and isn't always a non-ending fountain of benefits is a problem too. Because sometimes Christianity, or any religion really, not even just Christianity, does not make things better. It makes things worse, and a lot worse.
Yeah, but does something have to be true in order to be neutral,
to gain benefit from it? Like
benefits, like
I'm a big Star Trek fan, and like there's times that I'll point to a particular episode and say, hey, maybe this is relevant to a certain situation.
And people do yoga, folks do CrossFit, whatever. I'm sure there's something we're doing right now which people derive a lot of enjoyment, benefit from, and in 50 years they're going to be like, look at these morons, they were sweating in a 120 degree.
Right.
You're getting all your moral basis from Battlefield 1.
It's funny. That's an interesting question. I like asking myself now, what am I wrong about right now in my grown-up era, in my eyes wide open? What things am I completely wrong about? And I think it'd be an interesting world if more of us asked ourselves that question.
Yeah.
But is that something that do you ever go back and go, man, I really, so I'll throw this into the political arena. You're especially on social media, you're very vocal in terms of like the memeing and the reposting you do. And it is
mostly on Facebook, not as much on Twitter.
Yeah. Well, and I'm mostly only on Facebook, so I see that. So if it ends up being that at some point, some policy or whatever the hell backfires, is that, have you ever gone back and went, fuck, I was wrong about, I don't know, Bill Clinton? I don't really have a good example.
I don't have.
I could have sworn
now.
He did not get his dick sucked.
I find myself now, especially in the political side, because on the religious side, I have a lot more grounding. I can usually explain why something's wrong in a way that I'm not such a policy wonk. I'm not such a political animal that I can argue why such and such is wrong or why it's a bad policy as fast and as well as I can, because there's always the unintended consequences of any kind of political decision we make. And that's a lot harder to parse out and figure out what could happen totally unintentionally.
Sure. I mean, yeah, like a law that was meant to like, and speed limit laws, which were meant to like control accidents or something. Like, oh, well, they're net good, but then they slow down the delivery, jack up prices. It's hard to say, you know, like
I've got a perfect example of that right here in San Francisco. We recently had a law that would have affected rents for, for renters, putting a cap on it and changing the way that they can raise the amount of rent. Well, as a unintended consequence of that, all the landlords freaked out and they were getting ready to jack up everybody's rent to get it in before the law went into effect, if the law went into effect. So we almost lost our house because of a law that we support that would have done good things for the city.
But why? So here's an interesting thing is, we always talk about free market capitalism and, why this country's so great, whatever. That type of law would fly directly in the face of free market capitalism. One would say, well, listen, you're near the water, you got really good weather, no shit people are coming there. So the demand of how many people there are is enormous. Of course, you're going to have high rent prices. If you don't like it, or if you can't afford it, you meaning the masses,
right.
Move to Boise. Like, I'm sure it's great there. You could live there, but you don't. But you want to, not you.
Well, tons of people from Cali is going to Texas.
Yeah. Well, wherever, but then you're essentially limiting people's freedoms by saying, nope, you gotta, everyone deserves the sunshine and the water. It doesn't matter, and they should be only paying this much. So, is there any kind of a war within you about supporting something like that versus what it ends up doing to the environment?
Right, there is, but on the whole, I generally skew the other direction. It's like, yeah, capitalism is great, except when it's unbridled capitalism, except when you realize that the capitalists at the top of the system are fucking over everybody else in the system. And then it starts to become a little more unstable, a little more harder to justify that it's going to be able to maintain the status quo.
Mm-hmm. But wait, so is every landlord in this situation in the unbridled category, or is it just...
It's just when you talked about free market capitalism, I don't always think that free market capitalism without some kind of checks and balances, some oversight to that is always a good thing.
No, I agree. And I don't know anyone that's like...
I have libertarian friends who seem to think that it's a beautiful thing, but...
Right. Well,
we're well gone afield now out of my expertise.
Yeah, but I mean, if you get 1800s, I mean, the railroads, I think, there you go. Put antitrust laws in, right? I mean, you want to talk about unbridled capitalism.
Right.
I mean, they were just, to stop takeovers or dilute stock. You just crank, there's all kinds of, you would just create stock out of nowhere, and you can't do that anymore.
Right. But, there's enough that's already happening now and enough retrograde from the Trump administration. The things that have come out in the last 2 years blow my mind. As far as putting the fox in charge of the hen house. That's happening in cabinet by cabinet by cabinet, in department by department, in the ones that even bothering to put somebody in.
Is there an argument to be made that if you're a true, say, small government conservative, then you don't want those departments to have any power anyway? So who cares? If the fox is manning an empty hen house, who cares? That's
what Ben Shapiro would say. He said, if I were president, I'd get rid of the Department of Education and a whole lot of other departments.
Yeah, there's a part of me would love to go to that Black Mirror episode where that came true and see what the world looks like. But yeah, I don't agree. I don't think it's going to work out that way.
I think the best argument for that is, especially when it comes to like the EPA, is like the Clean Air Act of 1970 is what created this. And now this was a legislature's call.
Wait. Now, when you say created this, what are we talking about?
The management of the Clean Air Act. Like, what do we do? Like, how much like sulfur is a coal plant allowed to put out?
Right.
The EPA controls this.
Is it directly?
And how do you feel about that? How do you feel about the job they're doing?
Well, no, I'm not that much of an expert, but what I'm saying is, like, right now the executive, and these people are unelected. If the legislature had control of the bodies that govern this, then we'd have a say in it. Right now we don't. So to me, I look at it as a centralization of power.
You vote for president. You have a say.
You do, but I'm
Right.
saying too much centralization of power is bad.
Sure, and I get you. I can see both sides of that argument very well. Sure.
Okay.
I would say on a lot of these things, like I've read enough where it's like it sounds bad that something is being repealed. Like I know there was a repeal on like the ability to, I don't know, fucking hunt moose while they're traversing water, or like bear cubs while they're in the den. Some like it got
Very specific.
yeah, but it got reported in a way where it's like, what, you don't like baby wolves? Like, what kind of
Right.
fucking monster are you?
Yeah.
And then when you dig into it, it's like, well, in the areas where this ban was in effect, like they had massive overpopulation of deer,
Sure.
or whatever it was, I can't remember.
But half of it gets reported.
But then,
right?
the state law was really already covering that territory, so it was like
This is the thing.
law on top of law.
Yeah. Do we live in an era of? I think religious fundamentalism is gone down. Right. I'm sure that there's pockets of it.
Well,
out in the United States.
It is. But is it going down fast enough? And what is it going to do on its way out? Is what I'm more afraid of these days.
Sure. I guess what I'm afraid of is the political fundamentalism that I see. I mean, God, read the headlines these days. And just like you said, you can see both sides to this. And I agree. I can also do that. But God, everything is meant like to get outraged. They're good. I mean, I'm a pretty stable guy, but like, man, sometimes these headlines, they know how to get to me.
Yeah. And honestly, there used to be more laws in place to restrict that kind of unfair reporting. And Reagan did away with all that. And now we've got InfoWars. Now we've got Alex Jones. Now we've got Fox and Friends. We've got things that are completely out of control, completely 100% propaganda, and not just on the right, but on the left as well.
Right, like Occupy Democrats, I do not think is a acceptable source to use if you're on the left.
No, but it's interesting because I'm not familiar. What laws were there that, like, how can you dictate
fairness? There was a fairness and
fairness doctrine, they called it, and it prevented them from, like what Sinclair's doing, where they dictate, here's what all our affiliates are going to read tonight. Here's your script, and giving this monoblock message against whatever Sinclair wants you to think.
Is there an argument to be made that it was probably problematic from Reagan's era up until, I don't know, 2012, but from 2012 onward, I just picked a random date, because of the democratization of media and the fact that you can go online and you can get your news.
It was technology, right? Like it was a lot easier. Like this was the beginning of cable. Like people were starting to get cable.
I'm saying
there's a really dangerous trend right now of the dumbing down of media and the disrespect of appropriate sources of information. Journalists that actually went to school to be journalists that have a reputation, news outlets that have kept themselves, to strict journalistic ethics, and all those ones that have just thrown journalistic ethics out the window.
And they're activists more than journalists. It's like, if you're an activist, just say it. Don't claim, like, I'm fine to talk to activists, but I think when you claim that you're a journalist but you're actually an activist, that's a problem.
Sure it is.
That gets to, maybe you need a certification. Like, I can,
but who's going to police that?
What I'm saying is, like, and actually conservatives are against this, is like, let's say, Brian, let's say I want to give you a massage. Okay. And
he does.
Maybe.
But does Brian want you to get him?
That's a bigger question.
First of all, of course he does.
I have a
consent. He does. Yeah, I mean,
David, I'm very good.
Oh, no doubt.
So if I want to, I can go on Craigslist and I can charge you $20. But if I want to open up my own shit, I think, I'm not sure about this, but I think I need to be a licensed massage therapist, right?
Yeah, and that's not a bad analogy, because we're talking about, are you credentialed to do what you're setting out to do? Is there something to keep? This is what drives me crazy, and it's a left and right problem. It's the fake news. This is a satire. This is not, they're not even trying to give factual information. They are trying to get clicks via inflammatory headlines.
Maybe there's like a badge or some sort of symbol that we end up developing that says, and frankly, I don't know who would get the symbol now because everyone is biased as fuck. So
right, and then who is going to do this? I mean, didn't we do that in World War One?
Well,
right? That you had to have like a blue eagle by the government, or you might have been like the enemy, a German, like a German, or some of they were fighting like in this, and then the government threatened to take your blue eagle away, and then the citizens would just not do your story. I mean, that's as close as we've come to fascism. So I don't want to. The government controls too much. I mean, we Tom Leeds is saying like the government's never going to tell me what the truth is. Like I tend to agree with that. It's a little bit too much. That's why I don't like this the symbol. Like at least the government based. I think their independent news network might be able to do that.
Yeah, and I have a feeling we'd be able to go round and round on this topic all night long and not be anywhere near a resolution to it.
Yeah, I think it seems like we live in a time of political fundamentalism, and like the argument's been made by I think like Ben Shapiro and Jordan Peterson and some others that the decline of religion, and I think Jonathan Haidt makes this argument too, is in part like due to the fact now that we're just tribal. So now it helped keep left and right together. Like if the Catholic Church was evenly split, or like then you didn't have right and left getting is in each other's faces because we're both Catholic, we're both Christian.
Right. And what's scary now, is we're just as tribal as we ever were. We just don't know where the lines are anymore.
Yeah. Like what do you think? How do you think this is coming by? What do you think? Where's this coming from?
The internet has brought us all closer together, and at the same time, we're seeing all of the sides of each other, warts and all. So people who you thought were part of your tribe, maybe well on your tribe over here, over there, not so much. And we realize that there's nobody who thinks the same way as I do anywhere about everything. And I think a lot of us are really uncomfortable with that. There's whole segments of the population where if we, here's the thing, we'll see a news story, and whether we agree with it or not, first we want to know, well, who's saying it? Is it somebody from my side, or is it somebody else? And that's more important to us than whatever they're saying, or even the fact checking of what they're saying. And that's a little scary.
Do you think though this has to do with well, maybe you've never heard maybe you've never heard this either. I think there's an argument to be made that this is endemic of American culture as a whole. There's going to be some people that say there's no American culture, but it's always been a complaint, especially from the Eastern European part of the world and others, that Americans are fake. Fake smiling, fucking never telling someone to their face that you don't like them, whatever it is, backstabbing, very like
passive aggressive.
Passive aggressive. That's it. So like the face is very hot, but then, and so with the advent of social media and all that, now you're seeing behind the curtain, and you're like, this motherfucker, like Trump or likes Obama or whatever it is. So is it a problem of Americans not being able to face reality because they've been presented with a facade for so long, and that's how and that's how kids are raised in this country, is to essentially
be nice,
be nice, and then make as many fake friends as possible, which results in less real true friends at the end of the day.
Right. And now we're at the point where somebody posts something on Facebook and it's just like, fuck you, flame war on at the drop of a hat on just about any topic.
Yeah.
It's something I was thinking of when you were saying that just now. I had black friends from the South, and they told me when they came out to California, what freaked them out was they knew what the story was in the South. It's these white people over here hated you. These white people over here didn't. In California, they couldn't tell who was racist or not. And I thought that was really interesting.
What do you mean they couldn't tell who was racist?
It goes back to what you said. Everybody had a smile on their face. Everybody played nice, but you had no idea what was going on behind the scenes.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. There's I think actually there's something interesting that came up in the comments, which was someone is talking about how because of these divisions, he labeled this as a scary thing, is that the only thing holding us together is nationalism. And I would make the argument that
now a new dirty word, but go on.
Well, yeah, well, that's my whole point. Is I would make the argument that nationalism gets a bad rap because of guys like Hitler, for example, that have subverted it. Because the honest thing is that because we all look different, because now a lot of us aren't religious, or we're a different religion.
There's nothing to hang your hat on.
Right, we're not fucking Sweden, you know. And what do the
Switzerland
or Switzerland or whatever it is?
Yeah. We're a pluralistic society, and in a pluralistic society, everybody thinks they're the minority, everybody thinks they're the victim, and everybody thinks the other side is winning.
And now you have the oppression Olympics going on, so we're not homogenous. So there's nothing wrong with a healthy dose of nationalism to say, hey, we live in this country. That's what unifies us. We're fucking I have a passport. You have a passport.
But what does it mean to live in America?
Well, here's the thing, though. Here's the thing. When you say nationalism and you're talking about patriotism and e pluribus unum and freedom and justice for all, liberty and justice for all, those are all awesome things. But if you say nationalism is in white people from Christianlandia came in here and made this country for gods and guns, that's a whole different thing.
Right. Well, there's a lot of people that say patriotism is a better word to use, but it does beg the question, like, what does it mean to be an American? Right. It would mean a shared set of values. Do we have them anymore?
And
that's the question.
You can see a lot of the like Ben Shapiro was excuse me, was in Milwaukee not too long ago. And Brian, I think you went with some people to go watch, Jordan Peterson. So some of these folks who are considered, Ben Shapiro for sure, more conservative, you'll see that if there was, if the like with minorities that are in the crowd, everyone is seeing a camaraderie of, hey, we're unifying around some political beliefs. That has nothing to do with, oh, you're black or you're Chinese, whatever. So those concepts traverse racial and ethnic lines.
At best they do. At best, yeah. Doesn't always work out that way. Go to a Trump rally.
Right.
Well, religion could do that too. I mean, Martin Luther King used that for civil rights.
Hold on, but even at Trump rallies, you'll see plenty of people, or even some of the footage you see of like the Proud Boys things going on in Seattle.
Yeah, no. And then you see
Portland,
black and Asian folks.
Like you'll see black people or Asians, whoever, and they have like MAGA hats on, and they're very much supported by by the crowd. So it can't be, it's very misleading to think that some of these nationalist tendencies are predicated on some sort of racism.
I don't think I agree with you, Dimitri. I mean, I take your point, but all in all, there's too much ugliness that comes out exactly out of that racism to just wash away and say, oh, no, that's the exception, not the rule. I think what you're talking about is the exception, not the rule. And I could be wrong about that.
Personal racism or institutional racism?
Well, he's talking about, you see, for instance, a Trump rally where there's Asian people, where there's Latino, fill in the blank, and they're being supported. But I can't tell how many I've seen from the other direction, the opposite, where people think Trump is doing a good job. And why? Because he's putting these people in their place, because he's putting white people on top again.
Well, but I would ask for like a concrete kind of example, because I know, when folks talk about, oh, was Trump racist or not, and they bring up quotes, and he's an idiot, so obviously that's very easy to do. But in terms of like realistic policies that either conservatives are trumpeting or Trump himself are supporting, or even people who wear MAGA hats, for example, I can't point to a specific thing and go, that right there, like they're calling people the N-word, or like they're disparaging the Asians or whatever it is. I can't point to anything like that.
For me, I look at how these issues are addressed, and I'm talking about Fox in particular, but also Sarah Huckabee Sanders. The way Trump talks about, for instance, the migrant caravan that was coming up from Mexico, he's always, and that all the people on that side who are talking about it, they talk about in these fear-mongering terms.
Right, as we're using the word invasion specifically.
Exactly. Perfect example. And
that's just that to Jim Acosta, right? And that that was the whole thing. And he said, but president's not an invasion. And then he was like, we see it differently, Jim. I see it as an invasion. So I mean, he was straight up.
And Trump is constantly doing that. The alternate facts business of Trump. I mean, when you've got political watchdog groups just keeping busy 24/7, trying to tabulate the number of times that he's deliberately misinformed the people, that he's said a out and out lie.
But that can be contributed to. I agree with you, of course.
Yeah,
the man is not only an idiot, but arguably,
I mean, he lies about the dumbest thing, like attendance at the inaugural.
And so that's not. But I can't lay that. I have plenty of beef with that.
Sure.
I can't lay that at the feet of. What I have problems with is saying X people are homophobic, racist, and every other ism.
Sure. And let me stop you right there, because I have friends and family members who voted for Trump. I know they're not racist. I know they're not homophobic. And I don't know why they support him. And the reason I've come up with is that they aren't getting their information from anything that's critical of Trump. And so they think, oh, well, he's making the economy better, which he's not. Oh, he's doing these great things over abroad, which he's not. All these things, he's protecting our factories from being shut down. All these things that not.
Well, but there's some with when he renegotiated NAFTA, there's a certain percentage of like things that have to be built more here will probably bring some jobs back. Although you're right, they're probably knocked off with tariffs. But still, even, like, what about social justice reform? Like criminal justice reform. That was brought up in the chat too. That that's clearly a left wing issue. This is not being pushed by conservatives, and he's tackling it.
Even without the specifics, if you've got a family member, whoever who supports a political party, supports a candidate, whatever, you obviously, like, you can't disown them. They're still some part of your family. Maybe they're a one-issue voter, and even in that case, like, you could have a million arguments, be like, all right, fine, you care about whatever the hell let's say criminal justice reform. He did a good job. Okay, great. That's still, like, we still live in the same country. We have to, go to the grocery store with a lot of these people. And I think this is a great way to bring this back to the religious aspect. Is it's becoming a fundamentalism where it's a political ideological fundamentalism. And I'm like,
the personal is political now.
Absolutely. You know what? I think you totally nailed it, because I used to make this criticism about Soviet Russia, that they don't have atheism there. They have a secular political religion going on there.
Absolutely. It was a cult.
And now we're seeing the opposite. Now we're getting this political fundy Trumpism going on, where it's like, Trump can do no wrong, literally. He's making that joke about shooting somebody on Broadway or what, on Times Square.
On both sides, you do have a certain amount of Trumpism that that there's the blindly follow. There was some piece that got sent out where it said, "Sign this to thank President Trump." Like, well, doing his job, right? Like, I mean, thank him. Like, wow, we have to do this. I mean, this really just, it sounded ridiculous. But then on the left, we're seeing this censorship that's coming out, shouting.
Yeah, let's talk about that, because I get that concern, and I'm concerned with that too. It's as a free thinker, I want us to be able to think freely. I want us to be able to express our things. I also want people's rights to be respected,
But it seems like and it's weird. It's at the top tier universities. That the university, to me, always, and this is what I liked about, like, organized atheism too, is a place where I could go there and ask any question.
Yeah,
I feel like you can do that at the universities, but when you see, and especially people like Ben Shapiro. I mean, this is not Milo Yiannopoulos. This is a guy that graduated cum laude from Harvard, right at 21 or something, from law school. Academics like Heather McDonald and Christina Hoff Sommers, and being pushed out. Charles Murray, like, being physically attacked.
Right.
I mean, conservative ideas aren't to be engaged with or debated, but rather silenced and shut down. I mean, what do you make of this? To me, wow, that's scary.
But it says that there's been such a breakdown in communication and civility, for lack of a better word. And I know that word gets bandied about a lot, but we have to, as Americans, if you will, we have, as a society, we have to agree on how to disagree with each other. We have to agree on what things we won't tolerate whatsoever, and what things that we will listen to, even though we don't like what they're saying, and give them the chance to use their freedom of speech.
Yeah,
knowing what the difference is between freedom of speech and a Klan rally,
Where do you think that line is then? I mean, what would you suggest if someone asked you?
This is so not what I thought we'd be talking about when I came on the show today. I have no idea.
Brian keeps bringing it back to politics. I'm like,
yeah.
All right. I had so many good segues.
I appreciate that. You kept going. Let's bring it back to religion. Let's bring it back to Christianity.
Well, can we talk about critical mass, because this is maybe where we can tie this in, is when we went through the 2016 bullshit, and I honestly from 2014 on for a 2-year period, there was a lot. It was like the pot was boiling, right?
Yeah.
And then it seems like it boiled over. Like, I see a lot less political things on Facebook, but I also see a lot less, like almost no religious things. So it was like we had the height of atheism happening.
Yeah.
When Hitch was like doing his thing.
Yeah. Golden era. It was a golden age. We didn't even know it.
And then it died down. But you can tell atheism's not dead by any means. Like, we're still out there. We can do our thing. You're writing books, which are amazing. We need to talk about that. We will.
Even with MythCon, we've diverted to more social, political issues that just seem more salient right now.
I would make the argument that politics is kind of happening the same thing. Like, I don't think we're going to get anyone crazier than, or more outspoken than Trump.
Let's hope. Yeah.
Right. So let's say we hit the thing and now we're coming back down. I think that these things are kind of tapering off. I'm not seeing.
I'm hoping you're right. And I'm hoping with the fall of the Trump crisis that people will feel a little more on side.
The Facebook post cannot get, like, even again. So at the height of 2016, I was, I was sharing a bunch of, Bernie Sanders stuff, whatever. When 2020 comes around, even if he runs, there's no way. Like, I'm politicked out.
That's exactly it. We're all politicked out.
Exhausted majority.
Yeah. It's gone such a shitstorm in ways that we never expected. I mean, I didn't like Bush Sr. I didn't like Bush Jr. I didn't like Dick Cheney, but I was never terrified about fascism in America until Trump got elected. Took power. I won't say got elected.
Do you think that was an over, like, again, even the people who were at Charlottesville was like fucking 20 people. I know it wasn't 20, whatever it was, but it was such a low number, and they put the bat signal out to the entire United States. And
they've been rejected.
And you had fucking no one show up. Now, granted, a person died. Yes, the whole thing was horrible.
But look at the Unite the Right 2 rally. There literally was 10 people.
The whole point is the entire Nazi scare was so
is this a moral
overblown.
panic in the same way that, like, Seth Andrews talked about, like the satanic panic?
Right. Well, and that's a good analogy too. But here's the thing: that the satanic panic, I don't think there was anything behind it. The creeping rise of the alt-right, I don't know if that's you can sweep that away so much, because we have organized. I mean, it's almost like organized crime, but it's organized racist militia types, and that's scary.
Yeah, well, it could be, but you have the same thing with Antifa, though. But I don't see them in massive numbers. I mean, like, if there's 20,000 alt-righters, I mean, it sounds like a lot, but like in a country this big, it's not that big. And I'd say there's probably 20,000 Antifa folks.
And it really depends on if you feel like you're backed into a corner or not. What happens when you're on the verge of I mean, even religious fundamentalists, I would say, are less crazy and less toxic to society as a whole than they were 20 years ago, 50 years,
well,
100 years
the
ago.
fact that Trump was winking and nodding at them, right? And Ben Shapiro will admit this. I can see why that freaks some people out, especially if you're on the left.
Yeah.
Like I get that.
Because again, it only takes one whack job to shoot up a whole church, a whole gay disco. You fill in the blank. It only takes one. You know, if you're the black guy in the car getting pulled over, it doesn't matter if that's only one incident in a million. If you're the guy getting pulled over, it could happen to you any moment. Mm-hmm. And I don't think, as white people, I don't think we can ever understand the total terror of what it means to be a black guy in this society.
Like that isn't this why we read books? Like you know, you can come close to that, and the more you study it, like if you read the books about like the Gulag, right? If you read books about the Holocaust, like you can't experience it directly, but you can get a lot closer than if you didn't.
But this is it's an interesting segue in that we've talked to folks on the podcast where I've said, you know, I can see how, and whether that's called white privilege or not, but I've had thoughts about like, fuck, if I was, you know, jogging down the street, you know, wearing a hoodie, I'm like, would I feel any different if I were black? And objectively or hypothetically, I was like, yeah, I think I would, and that would suck. But again, I'm not, that is not enough for me to, you know, I'm not in a position of influence by any means yet.
Right.
But if you were gay, the ostracization, you could translate it. And
no.
Like if you were a nerd and you've been picked on, you can understand, you can put yourself
in. Time out. I'm losing you. Time out.
Yeah. What do you do with that realization? That doesn't mean that I'm running home and going, that's it, I'm voting blue, like down the ticket, because that doesn't do shit, because Democrats are no less racist than or no better for, I guess, minorities than Republicans. I would say.
I don't know if I agree with that. I agree with you that maybe blindly following any one party is probably not a good idea.
True.
But
true.
I wouldn't put them in the same. Oh, they're just as bad as the. No, I don't think.
I think it's my opinion is that just like with religion being a zeitgeist, politics, not politics. Your reaction to something is a zeitgeist.
When it's a Rorschach test.
In the 1920s, people, I think that's the right year, people were shocked by bikinis, right? And now you see one and you're like, yeah, whatever. You're not even going to, maybe you'll look twice if she's got a nice ass.
Right.
The same thing with like our reaction to black people or gay people, whatever it is. At this point, it has nothing to do with the political spectrum. And that's why I say this. Whether you're voting right or left, whatever, no one's putting black people back in chains. No one is like taking away the rights of gay people or whatever. So it really doesn't matter. Like both parties are flawed and fucked.
Hang on a second, though, because maybe black people aren't being put in chains, but black people are being killed at a higher percentage than anybody else getting pulled over in police custody. So maybe gay people aren't getting their rights taken away, but except that when they are getting their rights taken away, and that's actually happening right now all across our country.
Like where's the what like?
I mean, you look on my Facebook page, because it seems like every week I'm posting something about some school board that's harassing some trans kid, or some lesbian mother that's lost her job for having a picture of her wife on her desk.
Really?
I mean, this stuff has happened all the damn time.
But it seems like too. But you could pick on somebody because I don't like you. I want to get you fired because our kids hate each other, or all kinds of things. I don't know if we can.
Sure, but I mean, I'm just saying, don't just equivocate that, black people are going to be fine, gay people are going to be fine, when it's not a done deal. I don't think in their country yet.
It, but my worry is like even if all racism ends right now, gone, black people are still generally poor. Like ending that racist thought doesn't really uplift that community.
And I see what you're saying. That we've got to do more than just that.
In fact, and I think that the efforts become counterproductive, because now it's all this high moralizing. I swear to God, like sometimes social justice sounds like the church lady, and it's what is it? Racism? Instead, insert racism for sexism, and I'm like, all you're doing is signaling moral virtue, and you're not doing anything to help any Black people. Like I work with working class Black people all the time. Not one of them is cool with the SJW stuff. Now, the upper middle class Black people, I'm seeing a little bit more, but the working class Black people thinks it's all bullshit. It's not helping them. And so that's been my experience. Now, granted, I got an N of 20 there, but still, like, I don't get it. I would like to see the policies more as an uplift. Like, what can we do to help, as opposed to the moral. Let's
take it just one step further. What do you think of people like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and her socialism? How do you feel about her socialism?
Well, I think she also gets facts wrong all the time. So she's like the Trump, like Ben Shapiro goes after her hardcore, mainly because she's becoming a little bit of the darling, right? No, she's good at politicking. I'll give her that.
She's the Trump of the left. She's an idiot.
But she's been a little bit of a uniting force between like the far left and then the mainstream left.
Let me take a step further, because I'm not really trying to focus on her, but because I heard you guys talk about the free market and capitalism, and that's great. But what do you do to keep that in check and keep things equitable?
Yeah, you want antitrust laws and things like this. They're all, there's lots of regulations you're going to need with capitalism. Like
absolutely, that's exactly
what's the right amount.
And at the end of the day, we have like everything tends to go toward balance, right? It's just the laws of nature, right? So some people are born left-handed, some people are right-handed, and there's been enough of a body of evidence to say that traditionalist conservative thinking is on a biological level rather than I just chose to do this. Like, some people like to really keep their room nice and organized and whatever, and some people will just come home and like throw some shit on the ground. And so while some of it is learned behavior, a lot of it is biological. So I think the country will always kind of like, pivot back and forth, and
no side should win on this. I like that. You don't want the right to win or the left to win.
This is how I felt about the whole Supreme Court situation. It's like, every time we have a Supreme Court justice, there should be no question: is this guy qualified? Everybody should agree. If we don't, they shouldn't be. It's gotten so politicized, and I don't even care who started it. It's these guys should be above the not above the law, but they should be above the politics.
Like Roberts 10, he went through without much of a peep. So that was the last one that I saw it. And that it's interesting. But like, do you think that like we're losing like a fabric like of society? Is religion at all related to this? Like,
okay, so that's the question of religion doesn't have to be good to give us value.
Yes.
Right. I went through this. Do you remember the Simpsons episode with Jedediah Smith and where Lisa uncovers that he's actually a pirate murderer, rapist, And at the end she says, well, no, the myth of Jedediah Smith gives us values. That came out right around the time I was working on the book Nailed, where I'm showing that Jesus didn't exist, and not even hyperbole, not even trying to be provocative. I really sincerely don't think the guy existed, full stop. But that's not the question at all. Does it matter? I think it does matter ultimately, especially because with somebody like Jesus or somebody like the Apostle Paul, they become ventriloquist dummies. They become that Rorschach test for somebody else. It's like, tell me about Jesus and I'll tell you about you. Tell me about God, I'll tell you about you.
So does it matter how it's used? And now I'll finally come back to what Brian wanted to talk about, this whole goddamn.
What is a quick aside? Let's give them one question though. Like,
there's no way that's a quick aside.
No, it is
a whole point.
All right.
I want to talk about the goddamn temple.
Well, no, I would want to see but is Jesus's historical existence that central to Christianity? Or is it now? His question was, or is it the destruction of the temple?
That's Christian.
Okay, well, I can't read the name. Like, I could only read the thing. But anyways, I know. All right, I didn't know the pronouns.
Is Jesus' existence central to Christianity today, or central to the founding?
My question was for today.
Gotcha. Because as far as the founding of Christianity goes, not at all. Whether there was a Jesus or not, that's irrelevant to the Christianity we see today.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that blew my mind when I heard that biblical scholars like Kurt Knoll saying, you know what, it's not an important question because everything we know about early Christianity is true, whether there was somebody behind it or it was just preaching a mythical Jesus.
So, was it? So it wasn't even necessarily central to some of the Christians at the time either. Then,
absolutely not. Absolutely not. Because the further we go back in time, the more diverse Christianity looks, and the least we'd recognize it as anything like Christianity. And that's just the evidence that survived for the 2,000 years through all the shaving the serial numbers off the stolen bicycles that Christianity's done. That's just the evidence that survived. What if
somebody then says, well, I read Jesus Myth in Action. You make a really compelling case for that Jesus is not real, right? Or there's an atheist Jesus. But but I still think that there's value to Christianity in the narrative stories that I'm getting something good out of the stories.
Brian.
Like, you know.
Well, no. He's asking a good question. Here's the thing. Yeah, there's truth in Jesus' stories, whether they're true or not, just like there's truth in Winnie the Pooh's stories, whether they're true or not, or in Aesop's fables, or in any fiction. The question is when we confuse that one kind of truth for the other kind of truth. And when that kind of literary truth becomes dogmatic truth, then things get fucked up really quick. And it's very hard to unfuck them.
Well, what if someone tries to bring it back? And again, this is coming back to the whole point is, you know, the whole part of Jordan Peterson's whole MO is that there's this impression that there's a lot of atheists following him, and he is not an atheist. He doesn't necessarily believe in a maybe.
It's hard to pin him down on whether
it's hard to pin him down. Yeah, I'm not impressed with him on that front, I gotta say.
He's a dodgy ass clown when he's asked this question. Well, what do you mean by belief? Fuck you. You know.
Thank you. Thank you.
But then he'll turn it around and say, like, whatever you hold the sacred is your God. Like, I mean, thinking.
I hate that kind of equivocating bullshit. It's like, oh, atheists are religious because atheism is a religion, just like mine. No, it's not.
But we did sort of say that in the Soviet Union, right? That they had an ideological religion going on.
Right. You could list the ways that it acts like a religion. It's got dogma that couldn't be questioned. It persecutes, its heretics.
You could have that with the fundamental politics as well.
Social justice right now,
right? Like there's some people that will say social justice is a religion.
It is.
Well, here's the thing. I'm all for social justice. Does that make me a social justice warrior? That's an open question.
And that's a really good
that name.
You're probably not a fundamentalist, right?
I don't think I'm a fundamentalist, but I don't think social justice warrior should be a put down, and yet it's become a put down because of people acting in ways that aren't acting in the best traditions of free thought.
Because of those reasons, like I don't. To me, for the longest time, and maybe I'm kind of getting out of it, the term Christian, or I heard anything about Jesus or anything religious, a religious connotation, just like I was like, it gave me shivers, right?
Yeah.
So do you blame it that people have that exact same visceral reaction to social justice warrior because of the clowns that have dragged it into the mud? That's the tough thing. How do you come back from that as a Christian? How do you come back from the SJW moniker as someone who really buys into social justice?
Well, for instance, in my case, and I can really, at the end of the day, I can only speak for how I feel about it. I get where the critics of social justice warriors are coming from. I get where the social justice warriors are coming from. It doesn't change how I feel about those issues on both sides of that fringe, the pro and the con.
Yeah.
It changes the way I feel about how we are treating each other. And the way we treat each other is why I'm for social justice. It's why I'm, want to be an atheist activist to make the world a better place.
Sure. If you talk to some of the religious, that's what they kind of say they're doing too. I think.
Do you have any sympathy?
What about forgiveness though? Like they can't. The biggest difference in religion.
What about proportionality? It's like, I can see both sides, but it doesn't mean that I'm always walking down the middle of everything.
So when you meet,
but if
someone who's
intersectionality had a plan for forgiveness, right? Like it would be easier, because it seems like you go into that, it's a minefield. You blow your leg off, you're done. Whereas, like, you know, maybe the religious go too far, where you could be like this horrible murderer and then go to heaven. But like there is a middle ground of forgiveness.
Kevin Hart cannot host the Oscars.
Yes.
He is a homophobe.
They've literally set the standard so high that no human can.
That's how. This is how I feel about the James Gunn scandal. James Gunn, the director of Guardians of the Galaxy.
Oh my God!
Clearly did some heinous things.
Went after him.
Yeah, and it's like this was a hatchet job from his critics who didn't give a shit about the issues they were.
Cernovich, right? Like, and he is like more of that like leaning alt-rightish type. Yeah.
Well, David, when you meet a moderate Christian, so someone who's not a fundamentalist.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously you've written like 3 books on Jesus
and more. So,
or lack thereof.
Yeah.
Do you have like a cooties reaction, or are you very
whenever anybody tells me, well, as Jesus said, blah blah blah, I definitely get the
right,
eye roll going.
But I don't consider that someone to be like, like on Sunday, I like to go to church and then I have a pancake breakfast,
Yeah, like Unitarians don't bug me, just in the same way.
Christian.
They're like the Church of Social Justice now. Literally, I pulled up. We discussed some of their stuff last time. They actually called it a theology of social justice.
Oh, that's not right. That's not right.
That
shit ain't right. Here's the thing. Anytime somebody tries to pigeonhole me as far as how I feel about this group over here, it always boils down to how have members of that group affected me? How do their interactions go? How open are these people to changing their mind? How open are they to how compassionate are they to their fellow human beings? All these things.
But what is compassion though? Like this is like I hear this a lot about like, okay, what we want to be compassionate, we got to have empathy. But what is empathy? I mean, if a person's in pain and you're in the hospital, right, you could give them painkillers to stop that pain. Or you could say another kind of compassion could be like, you know what, bear through it. I know it really hurts, but if we start you on these painkillers, you may never get off them.
I think compassion,
like that could be another form of compassion.
It's a filler word. David didn't mean to say it because that word means absolutely nothing anymore.
But no, but I think they say conservatives don't have compassion, and I wholly disagree. They have a different kind of compassion.
Well, here's the thing. There's a certain level of hypocrisy on the left and on the right, and they manifest in different forms, and I hate them both. And it seems like anytime we present any kind of hypothetical situation, I'm glad we're talking nuances, because we should be talking about nuances all the time. And there's always more to the story. So like when you talk about conservative compassion, that term is a bugaboo for me, because it's been misused so many times by people who were neither conservative nor compassionate. They were oligarchs who want more money and fuck everybody else.
Yeah, but there's sometimes like, there's sometimes when that needs to be attended to, but there's sometimes when you're like, all right, you need to buck up. And like, you can sometimes later be like, oh, thanks for telling me that. And like, one is almost a form of derision, but yet it could be compassion. Like it's just different. Obviously both can be misused.
Let me jump in. There's an old Irish saying. It says, the well-fed don't understand the lean. And I think a lot of times when we're approaching a problem from the point of, well, it's not our problem, but here's how you fix your problem. There's a lot of inequalities in our society, and I don't know how to fix them all, but I know that they need to be called out and pointed to. And I'm not saying that makes all conservatives my enemy. Absolutely not. But a lot of conservative arguments are coming from a place that I don't trust.
But what about talk that leads to no action? So I think I want to come back to something which I kind of disagree with, but I don't have numbers, so I can't talk about it. But there was the you were talking about the black police issue, for example. Yeah. So I think police are corrupt across the board. It doesn't matter. I've seen numbers that say that the fact that the disproportionate shooting of black people is an absolute myth. But I don't want to talk about that. I think they shoot people more than they should, regardless.
And you could de-racialize this issue and solve it.
Exactly. You don't have to be anti-cop you can be anti-murder and pro-cop. That shouldn't be a problem. Yeah.
So why? But why is the racial component so essential? Right? If you try to deracialize it, they'll say, no. This isn't. This is. It has to be. Like I don't understand that.
But
even you know what? I'm sure there's a lot of issues that can be deracialized, and there's some that racial attitudes are at the core of them, and in ways that we don't even know, and we don't recognize, and we don't feel comfortable acknowledging. And I could be wrong about that, but that's how I feel about it.
Well, even
not just racial issues, but economic issues, religious issues. All the things that divide us. I'd like us to be able to focus on how we can come together and fix these problems.
Yeah, like to see the political opponent is the loyal opposition and not the enemy.
But there's two problems here. One is that there's a group of people who believe that you should do things yourself. You shouldn't look to the government to somehow help you be in a shittier situation, right? That's mostly conservatives.
Yeah.
And two is when you look at it, like no one on the in this political arena has any kind of concrete proposal of how to make cops more accountable. So by saying, well, I vote blue across the board because I care about, even if I grant that, sure, it's true that blacks are disproportionately killed by cops, voting Democrat does absolutely zero in order to help the problem. It's just that you feel good about yourself from a virtue signal perspective, but at the end of the day, it's your local police department who you should, picket or whatever it is, get a new police chief or whatever the fuck it is. Is nothing to do with who's even in your local government that will help solve that problem.
And I think you touched on something too. It's like, I could quibble about what you just said, but the main thing that sticks out as me is like, we have to get involved locally in our community. All of us do. And I think the more we do that, the more we realize that we have more in commmen with each other than what's dividing.
Because if you sit at home and you're on Twitter or whatever the hell, or Facebook, and you see someone, a lot of these posts are, I think Brian sent it, they're like designed, we now know how to hit the right button.
Absolutely.
They know how to do it. Like, have you ever been on, like, this is a site that the left wing hates, but Jihad Watch? All right. Yeah, and that site is meant to rile you up. I hang on there for an hour, and you're like, oh my god, this is crazy. These people,
and that kind of just outrage addiction is just pandemic throughout.
It is, and it's
media.
All over. It's not just on the right,
and it's a serious problem. And I gotta say, I know I'm the token liberal today, but you know what? I love the conversation we've been having together. I wish more political conversations were like this.
And the interesting thing, I mean, it sounds like Brian and I are coming from a conservative angle, but if you were to tally up our leanings by the letter of the book or whatever the fuck, we'd end up, well, maybe I would end up on the left, but
I'd probably end up a little bit on the right, but not
point being, at this point, it doesn't matter, because if you're gonna talk to anyone who has, is remotely passionate, I know you're passionate, but you're a level-headed, passionate person. I can't say that a lot about the folks who I talk to, because as soon as they're like, "Oh, does that smell like a one conservative position?" Fuck you.
Well, here's what
they're done.
Here's what I think the root of the problem is, and I actually think Boghossian and Lindsay are on this. That the university, like, and they're calling it the grievance study programs, are giving this an enormous backing that they don't deserve. And one of the problems with the free speech and shoutdowns on campus is that free speech is, I think you and I have the same definition of free speech. But if you're on the intersectional left and you've bought into it and you're a fundamentalist, you believe that the free speech, you're not your individual person. Like, it's my privileged white male, like upper socioeconomic, whatever, that's driving my utterances. That I'm not really, I don't feel that way. I'm saying that because of my identity. You're saying what you're saying because of. So in that, what they're saying is, no, you're literally drowning out their free speech. So we need to shut you down because we need to hear them. So if you have that conception of free speech, like, then everything falls apart. And that's what, like, that's a fundamental, like, piece. If we can't agree on what free speech is, like, then we can't even make the other arguments.
I hear you. I want to just point out one thing, and not to put you guys on the spot at all, but the fact is we have 3 straight white males talking about all this stuff,
True,
How
but-
often?
okay,
How
but-
often do you have somebody who's not those things on this show?
But who knows who
Or
knows
any shows
more
like
about
this.
giving birth? A 40, like a male gynecologist in practice for 40 years, or a woman who hadn't had a baby?
I missed the first part of that.
Who would be more familiar with pregnancy and giving birth? A male gynecologist, 40 years in practice,
White.
or a woman?
I think you're
that's
missing
never
my
had a baby?
point. I'm not saying, yeah, screw Whitey. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying,
But-
we need to be listening to the other side.
We
And
do.
for us, the three of us here,
But my contention is
There's
that,
a Nicaraguan in the background.
if
for the
you're a
record.
victim,
that's true. There is a Nicaraguan. That's right.
if you've been shot at in the inner city or something, then you're a victim, right?
Yeah.
But you're not necessarily more qualified to talk about crime statistics than somebody else that's like, I don't know, in the upper middle class that's like studied in crime statistics.
Well, sure. And I'm not sure quite where you're going with this argument, because I'm not sure that's what I'm saying.
I see so much dismissal that based on identity.
Yeah, that's true.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
That they'll immediately then put an asterisk on identity. Like, I think I put an asterisk on myself on how much I know about this situation.
Sure.
Like, so, like, you know, for the EPA, like, I didn't want to go too much. I don't want to go past my knowledge standpoint.
Right.
Your opinion is granted a 0.75 modifier because you're a white male.
Yeah, I don't like
Yeah.
that. Like, if I'm unqualified to talk and somebody outsmarts me, yeah, put the modifier on me. But like, not just because of it just seems so racist and sexist. And I just don't like it. But anyways, that's my contention. But what we were getting the point
Can we
was,
come back to David's book?
but no, but my point is, like,
just
do
one-
you
Whatever
believe?
the fuck you're saying,
What are
time
your
out.
thoughts on, like, the culture? Are we is the intersectional stuff, like, is that division? If we change free speech in that way,
Yeah,
like, we're really hurting.
David,
like, now,
how does your book speak to intersectionality? Tell us.
Here, I'm glad you asked that question. When we're talking about the things I talk about in my books, and I talk about atheism without any kind of sugarcoating, it's like, yes, I think your religion is bullshit. You might be a lovely person. Your religion, your holy books might say some lovely things, but it is bullshit. And here are all the reasons why it's bullshit.
So in your book, Jesus is definitely white in that case, right?
Well, I mean, he's presented as somebody who would have been a Palestinian first century Jew. So he was probably brown, but
he's probably
again,
like 5'2", right? Because
David, you're not.
there's
allowed
so many problems with saying, well, what was the real Jesus like? Well, what was the real story? Was he really nailed on a cross? There's, whenever anybody tries to pin down from me on the Jesus story, it's like, at the end of the day, we're talking about a fictitious character, an allegorical character.
Yeah.
And
How
all
about-
his pals were too.
And now, what about, like, things like, I always had trouble with, like, the Abraham Isaac story, right? And I think, like, in atheist circles, what we would do, like, there was Non-Stamp Collector had this video where, like, you know, it's cartoon and, like, the kid's like shaking, sweating, and, you know, the knife's up here, and he's like, ah, you know, like, and then somebody's like, imagine the PTSD on that kid, and I thought,
Right,
you know,
right.
that is it is impressive. But then when
I
was
follow
listening
that at all.
okay, so Abraham, do you know the story then?
Yeah.
So in Abraham and Isaac, like, the story is, you know, you have to sacrifice your son, right? But now
Obviously,
imagine
the
that
answer
really happening. You're the son.
Obviously, the right answer is no, I'm not gonna. Fuck
Right.
you.
But
Yeah.
what he was saying is actually what this is like a metaphor for is, like, imagine, okay, you're a Jew, and Jews have been
I'm imagining
discriminated against for eons, right?
Yeah.
And you're going to raise your kid a Jew.
Yeah.
It means he's probably going to get picked on. He's probably going to, like, you're setting him up for all the things that might happen to him. Like, you'd have the choice. You could not do that, right?
The problem with that is that's just one possible interpretation of this fictitious
but that's
allegorical
the point,
story.
isn't it? That, like, it's not so much that the day kills, it's that by teaching the religion and your sacred religion, you're putting them at risk. And so it's a metaphor for, you know, you have to put your children at risk at times. I mean, you put them on the bus. That's a risk.
But this is the problem. This is the problem. And I'm not to disagree with what you're saying, but the problem is that when we're talking about metaphorical stories, when we're talking about allegories, there is no one true way to read it.
Yeah.
And religions insist that their way of reading that metaphor is the one true way because God told them to.
But if you have people who interpret things, again, we get back to Jordan Peterson, big his whole, hear allegorical stories, and they teach us these fundamental truths about humanity. These stories,
they're calling ancient wisdom
for 2,000 years, so they're an ancient wisdom. You could probably derive those same wisdoms from any book that you can randomly pick up.
Thank you. This is exactly the point.
But that stood the test of time.
But to play devil's advocate, if you want to reach people with your whatever the fuck you're doing,
right? It's better to say it's not me; it's the word of the Lord.
Yeah, but we're reaching back into antiquity.
So if you pick a book off the shelf and you have a meatloaf recipe and you're trying to derive ancient wisdoms from the meatloaf recipe, I have no doubt in my mind that you would be able to do it. And I would, and anyone would.
Right.
But how many people are you going to be able to deliver that truth to versus going, well, fuck, I mean, this thing's been around for 2,000 years.
Yeah, 2,000-year-old coins, awesome, just by its age.
Way better than the meatloaf recipe. And if I'm going to derive truths from something, I might as well do it from this than the meatloaf.
And it stood the test of time, right? So there is something to that.
I must confess, I feel like I've lost the thread of it. What are we arguing for now? It's like what?
Well, no. So I guess the contention is if religion stays on the fairway, right? As soon as it goes out into the rough or out of bounds, it's fundamental. But the narrow fairway, is religion actually a net good and better than atheism?
Using net good.
Like
it's not a good
but that's the argument being put forward that it adds to the social fabric, and without it,
is it?
Well, here's you know what.
This is an easier way. Is it not shitty? Because I think we all agree that religion sucks. So if it stays on the true and narrow, is it not shitty?
There's another consideration here. There's another consideration because we could argue all day whether religion is going to play well with others or not. And it doesn't always. Sometimes it does. There's a quote I love that says religion makes good people better and bad people worse. But here's the thing. Whether it's good or bad, the truth is, it is dying out. It is dying out in the younger generations. And those numbers, and especially in America, especially in pluralistic societies with an internet, those numbers are falling. And it's going to be replaced with something else that's just as tribal. Maybe political, maybe environmental.
But is it going to be worse? Like,
it's definitely going to be different.
The enemy
maybe those tribes, maybe if we have those tribes based on something that's real, maybe we have a shot at making a better situation.
That's true, but then you have to go out of your way to actively kill something versus, like Brian and I were talking about this, 5 years ago, whenever I discovered atheism, and I made this hard conversion, I was kind of militant in that, or anti-theist, and where I was like, oh, these people are so
the happy
stupid.
3-month stage.
Yeah. I'm like, they're so dumb. No, it lasted for like 2 years.
Oh, wow.
And I would just be so dismissive of religious people. And now I'm to the point where I'm like, maybe in the back of my mind, I'm like, well, you're kind of dumb because you go to church, but I'm not like, ugh.
Right.
I'm going, sure, you want to do it. Like some people do a book club. I'm not dismissive of book club. You want to go to church and you want to do
that's your thing. Yeah.
If that's your meditation,
yeah,
that sets your life in order for the week. You know what?
Yeah.
As you're not murdering me, I'm great. Like Mazel tov.
And I'm happy to tell you why I think your religion is bullshit, which is I do on a regular basis every day. But I'm more interested, are you a good humanist? Are you a good, rational, secular humanist? And are you making the world a better place by the way you live? Because sometimes you can believe all the right things, know all the right stuff, and still be a flaming asshole.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
And that's a whole different
Do you think we're moving too fast on some things, though? I was looking at the statistics in the Catholic Church, right? Like the gay marriage is pretty much like has a 2/3 majority, right? And that's a veto-proof majority in the Catholic Church. Like, but now when you push it to trans, which I think is a little bit more misunderstood, are we expecting too much from people? Because like the gay rights movement took a while, but now you don't need to enforce it anymore. Everyone believes it. Like, are we pushing it? Like, trans seems to be weird. I've even heard that if you have a sexual preference, like, you're bigoted. I mean, like that's crazy.
That seems a little crazy too. That seems to be conflating. Two things are separate. I think what it is 2014 basically is when trans broke for most people.
Yeah.
Whereas the gay movement goes back to the 70s. So we've got a whole generation of people who are totally have been exposed to gayness in a way they haven't been to transgender issues.
Mm-hmm.
And I think maybe it's even easier for people to think, at least it's easier now for us to look at someone and say, oh, they're a girl who likes other girls. There's a guy who likes other guys. More than so to say, here's a guy with a girl brain in him, and here's a girl with a guy brain in him. That concept's a little tougher to wrap our heads around.
But the zeitgeist makes us more compassionate regardless. So, like,
thank you. Yeah, that's what we need.
Yeah, and the DSM-4, DSM-5 classify transgenderism as a mental disorder. If I believe that, that doesn't make me a transphobe, because I've met trans people. You know, I'm not overtly like going, this is a subhuman person.
No, we platformed a ton.
And there are plenty of people on the conservative side of the spectrum. I'm sure there are people that are like, that's gross. And I guess, you know, maybe those are the people that would have hated gay people in the 70s.
This is the thing, yeah.
But there are plenty more people. But the problem is that people like myself who are like, well, no, these are clearly the guidelines. Like, I have no ill will, but I'm not for a second going to think that this is, you know, maybe someone who's healthy until the guidelines change or we have more science, whatever. Why am I, you know, or someone else called a transphobe at that point and equated with the person who wants to, you know, burn this person?
We got for MythCon, we got, despite the fact that we were platforming a number of trans people, got called transphobic a ton, which is silly.
I found that a little silly too myself. And it goes to the point of, if we're transphobic, what should we do about it? And you guys did exactly what anybody who's been accused of being transphobic should do. You platformed trans people to get there.
Which is normal.
So stop saying that. Yeah, exactly.
But we platformed the wrong trans people. I guess, like, you lose your victim status if, like, you're a trans person, you wear a MAGA hat, like Blair White.
And there's also nothing wrong with mental, you know, it's been how many years since, you know, we did lobotomies. We have normalized mental disorders. There are people walking around that are bipolar, and no one is pointing fingers at them and going, they should be killed. So if we remain hypothetically in this world where transgenderism is considered a mental disorder and a genetic abnormality, that's not to say that these are subhuman people. We're not killing anyone.
Okay, so, I see where you're going with that. Here's my problem with it. It's one thing to say I'm just being medically objective, and objectively speaking, you know, let's consult the scriptures. They are a medical, you know, it's
but we categorize. We're humans. We categorize everything. At some point, you know, you're going to teach your kid, well, like, what do you do? You know, like, you have to categorize stuff, and like, can you categorize it? Is that
I think we
transphobic characterization?
And this is, like I said, it's not even been 5 years since this went on most people's radar. We're just starting to get our heads wrapped around this.
I agree.
Give some time.
We should just go back the you know, that you're a transphobe, and rather just have this conversation that we're having.
I'm more concerned with the trans people themselves who are suffering than the transphobes who are suffering because there are trans people.
Yeah.
And I'm not even trying to be funny. It's like, I'm sorry that it freaks people out that there's trans people, but there are trans people. We need to do what we can to make their lives better too, because they have it worse than anybody else in our segment of society that I can think of.
Right, and
I don't know. I mean, you could have a veteran that's got all his limbs blown off. You know, like,
it's not a race. It's not a race. But I'm just saying, I don't see veterans with all their limbs blown up getting attacked as much as I do trans people getting attacked every single day. We've had a Remembrance Day for veterans for a long time. We only just started having a Remembrance Day for trans people who've been murdered in the streets openly. I think it's not quite the same thing we're talking about. And again, it's not a race. I'm not saying they're the only people that matter. I'm not saying that they're the only people suffering out there.
But should we tell, like, every trans person that they're a victim just by that identity? Like, they may be.
Wait a second. Well, I mean, there are people who are being killed for being trans.
Sure. But
there are people who have to put up with that shit from people every single day, every minute of their lives once they decide to come out of the closet.
But individuals like Blair White, though, doesn't consider herself oppressed in that way.
And
that's awesome. Good for her.
But
I mean,
people get killed for a variety of reasons. There's still people that get killed for being black or Jewish or just for walking down the street in the wrong neighborhood. So
what does that mean? What does that mean, Dimitri? When you say that, what are you trying to run me off from? What is it a response to?
Yeah, so we think that racism is bad.
Yeah.
I think no one thinks that transphobia is good.
Yeah.
Yet we misclassify the label of someone who has wronged the zeitgeist. So that's the problem is, no one is saying that it's not okay that trans people are being killed or whoever it is. But I think we're like, it's not
right, but they're automatically victims. Like some are.
No, I'm saying we haven't all self-actualized, sure. But society is really like, we're in a pretty good place where you can look at someone and be like, that is objectively an asshole. And like, we're very good at doing this, but we're doing so much. Like, are we trying to, go over the top because we were such dicks in the 60s? Like, I don't get it. Why?
Yeah.
Like the vast majority of people you run into in the street are not only are they not trying to kill name the minority, but they're also probably not a phobe of that minority. So why? Is it just because it feels so good to virtue signal and pretend like there's a lot of hate out there?
Maybe, but what I see is that there's still so much out of balance. There's still much inequitable about the fact that these guys are getting, men and women are getting disproportionately abused, murdered, fill in the blank, Yeah, I mean, you can say it about prostitutes. You can say it about black people. You can say it about veterans, homeless people, and any member of our society. We probably, I mean, there's no end to them. There's no end to these subsects of our society that need to be treated better than they are.
Yeah, and I think we the best thing for me is like to go tackle that stuff like head on and see if we can't uplift those communities. I don't know if like the shaming or the trying to get rid of the attitudes is as opposed to making sure there's not like going after the beat ups, like I just don't want these people to get beat up and so on and so forth. It's going to take a while for attitudes to change.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we're spinning our wheels, like fighting people's attitudes when we should be, when there's other things that I think are more practical.
So I totally agree with you. We do have to do practical things on top of that, but it's not an either or. It's like talking about religion for atheists. It's not an either or. We don't have to either be firebrands or diplomats. We can be both or neither.
So David, before we sign off here, talk to us about your book and how, if Jesus were a transsexual, what does super crucifixion look like?
It'd be fabulous. It'd be ultra gay and super fabulous. It would.
The non-binary Jesus.
You know what? Okay, we have to have me back on the show and talk about the books because I do think it's important for atheists to have the argument. I don't think it's important for Christians and atheists to have that conversation because it's such a non-starter. But and this is why, because everything, whether you think there was a Jesus and you're on the historicist end of the spectrum, or you're pretty sure, no, I don't think that guy existed at all. Everything we learn in the back and forth between those two camps on both sides helps us better call the bluff of anybody who thinks they know how Jesus wants us to behave or think or vote. And that is a huge thing. That's not nothing.
Absolutely true. And that you're sometimes when you go looking for the truth, what you find isn't always pleasant. And and you're being honest. And that's I always appreciate that.
And it's fascinating. Honestly, it is fucking fascinating to see where this huge enchilada we call Christianity came from.
It is. And I think if anything, like if you can you don't necessarily have to convert somebody to be the atheist. If you can, take a chunk out of fundamentalism and moderate that, like that's a win. Because
yeah, absolutely.
And then you're halfway there.
Yeah. And I think just seeing the development, the origins, and the evolution of these ideas, when you see the story of how they came to be what they are today, it's a lot harder to take them seriously as anything that got handed down from heaven, on 10 Commandments.
Yeah.
When you see the evolution and the mix mash and how new ideas came in and where those ideas came from.
And it still allows for those that gain value in certain parts of this on a personal level, which again, I'm still open to that argument, like that could be, a net positive. Like you can retain that. And that's one of the things that drew me to mythicism.
See Daniel, the Temple, and the Hebrews, Jesus Mything in Action, Volume 3 for more.
Nice. Well spotted. Well spotted. And hey, while we're on the subject, while we're pimping out shamelessly, if you're sick of the Jesus thing and I just want a good romping sci-fi adventure that'll blow your mind, see Time Shards.
Nice.
All these make great Christmas presents.
Are you going to give us the 30-second trailer?
I will. My elevator pitch for Time Shards is it's a time travel post-apocalyptic mashup. The conceit of the book is that this cataclysm happens in the 23rd century that shatters the timeline, and all of a sudden the world is in this place of mismatch where over here it's 1492, over there it's 5 million BC, over here it's the 1870s, and this and most of it's prehistoric and but there's this ragtag group of our characters who come from all these different times, have to learn to work together and solve this mystery so that they can save the world. And it's just super fun. I'm really proud of it. The critics have just flipped over it. And there might be some, and the trilogy is well on its way.
And how did was it your idea, or was it your wife's idea? And then how did that work? Like,
I credit to his wife immediately.
She's on that.
David, it couldn't have been you. It's too good. Was it your wife?
Right. Clearly, this is the thing. Yeah, it actually started when we were coming home from Comic-Con, and I was telling her about this idea I had for a role-playing game in college. And the more I talked about her, the bigger her eyes got. And she said, "Oh, Dave, we have to turn this into a book." So as soon as we got home, she called her publisher and pitched the book, and they bought all 3 books right off the bat.
Nice.
Wow.
Yeah. That's cool. Well, I appreciate that story. I just
no, that's
Dimitri. Could it be you? I don't know.
I'm excited about this book. The real question is, when is the audiobook coming out, and are you going to narrate it in a deep, sensual voice? I
do that with so many of my books, but actually the audiobook for Time Shards is out. It's in ebook, paperback, and audiobook already.
Right. Your Song of Solomon, like at the Apostacon 14 with Cara Santamaria, was still one of the funniest things I've ever seen.
Thank you, sir. And that will be the next book in the Complete Heretic's Guide to Western Religion. Is I will turn the sex and violence in the Bible into a book.
Really good.
It'll be sex and violence in the Bible, and it'll be the Jehovah's Witnesses.
Nice. and it's nice. And for those out there, like if you haven't checked it out, it's really good. And it's very critical and points fun without being dickish. It's very onion humor, which is like, it's funny, but not dickish. So it's if you're religious, watch it. I think you might be able to laugh.
Brian, I'm so glad you said that, because that is exactly what I try to do. I try to make people laugh and think and not be too much of a dick about it.
That's cool. No, I really appreciate this talk. And I agree. This is like the only thing we can do, I suppose, is like this kind of polarization is lead by example and, and do that. Have these conversations because they need to happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Jesus Mything in Action is out. You can get it on Amazon, all 3 volumes. And they do have a very high star rating. So I must say, people are really digging it.
Yup. Also available in audiobook, ebook, and in, what was the other one? Oh, paperback. Yes.
Yeah, but mostly audiobook, because that's for lazy people like myself.
Yeah, you know what? It's not a bad idea to get both, because then you have the footnotes and the notes to look up too. And there are a shitload of footnotes in Jesus Mything in Action.
Okay, actually, thank you for letting us know, because otherwise, folks,
I know
just do the audio.
Yeah, I know it went long, but I really appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
David, always a pleasure, sir. And we hope to see you in Milwaukee, whenever you get tired of the West Coast, which sucks anyways.
I've left a part of my heart in Milwaukee. Yes, I would love that. All right, guys, give my love to everybody there.
All right, very good. Thank
Thanks
you.
for having me.
All
Take
right.
care.